Good morrow, scholars. Welcome back to a Last Jedi video essay. This should be part 5? Part 4. I'm not sure. It might end up being 2 parts. I haven't decided yet. We've gone over pretty much my main gripes with the film. Everything from the writing and the directing to the choreography in the major fights of the movie, and right now I'd kind of like to go over some fixes that I think would have made the movie work a little bit better. And I should say fixes because, well, not everyone's going to agree that the movie's broken, but also it's not like I'm some sort of an expert or anything. This is just kind of what I feel would have made the story work a little bit better. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and see, like if we can't brainstorm something better. I'm sure with you guys we absolutely could. But anyway, let's see. I actually would like to try my hand at doing a fan edit of The Last Jedi, because I've seen a few for the prequels that aren't great, but every now and then you come across one that actually works pretty well. I wonder how Topher Grace's movie looked when he edited the prequels into one comprehensive movie. Anyway, let's see. I think the first thing that should be changed is that Finn should remain in the coma up until the ending evacuation when they're going from what's it called? The Radis. When they're going from the Radis and they're abandoning ship, I think that helps a lot, because Finn's story arc in this movie was completely redundant compared to The Force Awakens. And I know how this is going to sound, and I know it's no fault of her own, and I bet you know where I'm going with, but honestly, the character of Rose did not need to be in this movie, and it's not because she's a woman. It's not because, like she's a bad actress or, anything like that. I have nothing against her. She was actually a lot how I see myself if I were in the Star Wars universe. The only problem was her whole plot line really only served to kind of pad the runtime of the movie. And the story arc they give her isn't really conducive to a saga film. But I've always said, if Finn and Rose had instead been, like, say, Ezra and Sabine in an episode of Star Wars Rebels, it would have been a fantastic, colorful, enjoyable, not that, never mind, like 30-minute episode of Star Wars Rebels, because, well, if you compare their biggest scene in the movie with I would say the biggest in that it's, just like the most amount of time, when they're on Canto Bight, and you can compare that to a couple of scenes from the last season of Rebels where, they're on the Lost Wolves, and earlier when Ezra and Sabine are on the run from stormtroopers and such. I think back in the first season, you can feel that there's a lot of similarities between the two, and it makes a lot more sense for her character, where they were going with her, what they were doing, and just kind of like her plot in general works much better as a cartoon protagonist. So I think that she should have been the main character for... You get out of here. Sorry, that was my phone. She should have been the main character for the upcoming Star Wars cartoon series. Or at least been one of the main characters. If not, the main focus, she could have been the Sabine. Like, not quite supporting cast. Hang on, I can't see my notes without my glasses. I can barely see my notes with my glasses. Let me know what you guys think. And the biggest thing about this movie that needs to be like rearranged, and it really pains me to say it, but they couldn't seem to decide between whether or not this is going to be Luke's passing of the torch story or Leia's, because they tried to do both at the same time, and it just kind of felt like they dropped the ball in regards to both. I think with like a few little edits here and there, keep enough Luke to where, Rey's storyline can keep going, even though it honestly really didn't, and then it just 0 to 60 for no reason. We'll say it's 0 to 60 in a active school zone. Anyway, I feel like this should have been Leia's movie. And because of how the movie was cut, shot, directed, and written, we didn't really get a good send-off for the character of Leia. And I understand that when they were writing this and such, that, Carrie Fisher had not yet passed, and, that hurts me in my heart in ways I can't describe. It's just, they didn't do her justice. You know what I mean? For all intents and purposes, however you want to look at it, this was really more of Leia's story than it was Luke's. Because even Luke's main conflict in the movie comes from the fact that he failed Leia and not only allowed Ben Solo to turn to the dark side, he was that final push over the edge. And so there should have been less, less of Luke, because it's not his movie, it's not his story. And that hurts too, but not the same. It hurts because it's Luke and I love him. And it's really obnoxious when I see people say, like, oh, you guys don't like this movie, well, how dare you insult Carrie Fisher's memory like that? And that's not what we're doing. We are really disappointed with how the movie was, made, and how it turned out, and we think it was a disservice to both Leia the character and Carrie Fisher, her actress. And it's really distressing at times. Everything in the last two movies, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, has basically been Leia's story. And she wasn't there for most of it. In The Force Awakens, it's mostly Han, and then he dies. In this one, Luke's mostly in it, and she's, in a coma, and then Luke dies. And I don't like that. You know what I mean? I hope you guys can understand at least like where I'm coming from, like my perspective on the thing. Perspective, yeah. Let's see. Another issue that I think needs to be slightly tweaked is, of course, her and Poe. I think there's some like miscommunication, and I don't mean like Vice Admiral Holdo not telling Poe the plan or anything, but let me see if I can say this in a good way. The movie tells us that he's supposed to be the next leader. Like, she's passing on the torch to him, to use a phrase that I used earlier. Not unlike how Rey is, taking up the mantle to, mince my metaphors a little bit more, from Luke. And I really feel like they did not do that storyline any justice. There is really nothing about Poe's story in this movie that makes me think he's worthy of being a leader. everything from The Force Awakens to this movie, he's gotten more people killed in the Resistance than I think I've ever seen anybody kill in any of the movies. I think, obviously, the only one who comes close is Tarkin with the Death Star, but, we're talking, like, single-person sort of thing. Well, I guess that wouldn't count either because, a lot of explosions and everything, wiping out the Star Fortresses and everything. But anyway, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. His whole idea of flying in, blowing stuff up, has gotten more people killed on his team than anything that the First Order could have done on its own. I need a drink of water. You know what I mean? It's hot in here. No, I'm just joking. Not the water. Luke. Let me go back to Luke real quick because I'm not quite done. All right. See, I'm overshadowing again. Okay, this is still about Leia's, storyline. Alright, so Luke was able to save Anakin Skywalker by redeeming him and allowing that part of him to destroy Darth Vader. And then Anakin dies. And I understand, the whole poetic appeal of the story. Like, he was able to do that to the second most evil man in the universe, to quote that one fellow. But when it came to his nephew, for whatever reason, he instead tries to kill him in his sleep. And maybe some of you who like the movie actually like that idea. Me personally, I think, much like I said with everything else, is the fact that there's no setup for it. And it would have been a great way for, Leia's character to have some actual, conflict in the new trilogy. Because as much as they try and tell us that she's wanting to reconnect with her son and, save him the way that Luke did for Vader, and by making him become Anakin again, we don't really see anything about that. If there could have been, more moments where Kylo Ren is hesitating to kill his mother aboard the Raddus, and don't get me wrong, I really do enjoy the fact that he ultimately decided not to, and that he blew up the ship that did attack. That was a really good moment. Both of them. It's just, I really feel like Leia's story was kind of kicked off to the side. I'd kick, but my feet are under the table, and I'm not going to knock it over again. You know what I mean? If there could have been some sort of real emotional interactions between the two instead of two separate scenes, that to me lacked that emotional gut punch that you expect. Because I'll be honest, I've been a fan for almost my entire life. I still feel for Luke in Episode 5 when Vader, does the reveal. And for this movie, I didn't get that feeling anywhere at all. You know what I mean? Okay, so we'd have to recut Leia's story. That would give us a bit more of a cohesive plot line for her. Finn and Rose being cut for the movie, that gives us a lot more time to kind of get back to the whole recut idea, because I think I got sidetracked with the fact that Leia needed more of the story to focus on her, and I feel like that's kind of a problem for a lot of things. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Anyway. And the reason I want to do that is because, number one, the Canto Bight sequence is, like, it runs way too long. It's really boring. I lost interest I don't know how many times. Like, I could not actually sit through it. I ended up going on my phone and started listening to a podcast every time it was on the screen. And I felt really bad because it's a Star Wars movie. And I really do want to like The Last Jedi. It's just, it's got so many problems for me and whatnot. But by cutting a huge chunk out of this movie that it did not need to be there, that gives us a lot more time for the other characters to, like, develop as characters, you know, properly. So we could get more scenes with Leia, her dealing with her conflict, both in regards to her son and herself. Because my sister blames Leia for the entire sequel trilogy, and she's not entirely wrong. The only reason Ben Solo went to go stay with Luke in the first place is because Leia made him go. Because there was a darkness in him that she couldn't deal with. And I don't mean like, I can't deal with this today. I mean like, she was not able to, like, break through that darkness in him and, you know, keep him from going to the dark side. However, the only reason, other than, you know, Snoke supposedly infecting him, let's say, in the womb, that he was suffering from that darkness in the first place is because Han and Leia were never around. She was always off. And don't get me wrong, it's very important to take care of the galaxy. You know, the government kind of gets in the way of things. I know that happens in real life. Heck, my parents were hardly ever around when I was a kid because of, you know, how much they had to work in order for us to have food at the end of the day. Anyway. Dang it, I kind of forgot where I was going with that because I kind of went off on a tangent. And I feel like it was very appropriate, but it was still a tangent. Anyway. So we get more of, like, Leia's conflict, you know, like, oh, could I have set everything in motion that caused this outcome? And, you know, dealing with taking responsibility for what she did / did not do versus, you know, taking responsibility for everything, you know, like putting it all on her shoulders, the weight of the galaxy. Like, she couldn't have known that her son would, you know, actively try and, you know, be Darth Vader. Well, no, technically she could have, because it kinda runs in the family. Anyway. And to move on, like, okay, so we've got more story for Leia. We get more Rey and her actually learning how to be a Jedi. And I don't mean like, oh, all these force powers that she has for no good reason. I don't like the explanation they give us. It's more of a cop-out hand wave than it is anything else. If they want her to learn these techniques by, you know, the mind link, I'm perfectly fine with that. But she still has to train in how to do it. Like if we could download fighting capabilities directly into our brains, our bodies would not be able to do it. And even if they could, they would wear out way too quick. They aren't accustomed to moving in such a way. They don't know how. There's no muscular buildup to allow you to function that way in any capacity worth doing. You know what I mean? And I know it's the Force, and like she's the chosen one, but she's not. But she still has to be able to use these abilities. She can't, like, physically use them, not just use them. You know what I mean? So if we could get like more of Rey training, getting stronger, learning what it means to be a Jedi, because I don't care what anybody says. I definitely don't care that the movie says it a bunch. Rey is not a Jedi. She doesn't have any of the I don't want to say qualifications, but she doesn't have the mentality for it. She's much closer, obviously, to Luke in the middle of Episode 5 than she is to any Jedi that I've seen. Well, I guess except for Luke in Episode 6 when he was a Jedi Knight and he, attacked Vader. And don't get me wrong, I like that scene because he's not attacking out of anger. Again, a tangent. However, he is using passion, I guess, of a sort. In order to overthrow Vader, he's not attacking him out of rage, the way a Sith would, a Darksider. He's attacking Vader because he's just threatened his sister, Luke's sister. And so he's fighting to protect her. It's that righteous fury. If I recall correctly, I think it was Plo Koon, when he felt such emotions, it allowed him to use a light side variant of Force Lightning. I think it was like Force Judgment, or something like that. It's two completely different emotions. Rage is one thing, sure, and, that fury you feel when, you believe in something and you must attack are two completely different things, despite what, various fans of Star Wars would have you believe. Anyway, jumping off from this, that would allow Kylo Ren to actually complete his training. We could get more of, like, his journey to being his own person, rather than being the poor man's Darth Vader. Which sucks, because I really liked him in the first one. I know a lot of people wanted to laugh at him, like his temper tantrums. But you gotta look at it the way that it actually is, rather than, you think you being clever. You thinking you're being clever. You're being clever. Anyway. He's desperately wanting to be Vader. He's trying to embrace the dark side. And when he lashes out, like when he's attacking the control panel with his crossguard saber, he desperately just wants to cut that guy's head off. But the light side in him does not allow him to, and so the only thing he can do is lash out at inanimate objects. There's a conflict in there, and that was a really great scene of showing that as much as he wants to be Vader, there's too much good in him. And then by the end of the movie, the good in him is somehow stronger, even though he's just killed his father. Again, spoilers. But in this movie, they completely chunk that out of the movie, and they just cut to like, oh no, he's just completely irredeemable. Now, he wasn't 20 minutes ago, and before that he wasn't, but for right there he was. You know what I mean? But I think that would have really done a lot for the movie, because I know a lot of people praise Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley for their portrayals as the characters that they, play. But honestly, I felt except for the Canto Bight sequence, And that's not to say, Kelly Marie Tran or even John Boyega are like poor actors in their own right. I'm saying like the sequence itself was poor. They were the weakest part of that movie. I know a lot of people during the fight scene in Snoke's throne room like to they kind of talk up Rey's visceral roars and screams during that fight, and honestly, it's not really anything special. I guess I can't think of a way to describe it. It was very detracting. They can't have her. They can't say she's a Jedi, and then have her act like a Darksider at the same time, and that's really what they were doing. And then you've got Kylo Ren. Oddly enough, I think he fits more of the Jedi persona, even with him, killing Snoke the way he does. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think. There we go. That Kylo Ren killing Snoke because he insulted him one too many times is really dumb and an insult to the character. But the way he did it, I think, was probably the best way that he could have done it. And there's just no setup for it. It's kind of like with the missing dagger during Rey's fight. It was there, and then they got rid of it, and no one questions it. You know what I mean? Okay. A few more things, I swear. I might be done soon. We needed... I don't know if you guys remember. I can't even remember if it was just a rumor, if it was a thing that they were going to do. But there should have been an extended a flashback sequence. Since they didn't want to do a flash forward, the time skip that they normally do. Sorry. They should have gone back in time and shown us, sort of the events that led to everything, to give us some backstory and actually have us be emotionally invested. We needed to see Luke starting the academy. We don't necessarily need to see him gathering everybody up, because that would have been a whole movie on its own. Trust me, I know. I've got 3 books where he's doing just that. And anyway, it's kind of like okay, you know how in China The Last Jedi did really badly? And a lot of it was because, who are these characters, and why should I care about them? Especially in regards to Luke, because they have no idea. The movie was completely lacking context over there. We get that here in regards to The Last Jedi's story. There's no emotional connection. There's no like audience empathy. We don't care about these characters because we don't know these characters. And at the same time, even though this movie takes place immediately after the last one, it acts as though it's been a huge chunk of time that's passed. Honestly, it feels like more time passed between this movie and the last one than between Episode 5 and Episode 4. You know what I mean? But the movie acts as if everything just happened. And that causes the movie to, really lose a lot of momentum. It just... have you ever gone at a full sprint and then immediately tried to stop? It's not going to work out too well. I've tried once. Not that I can really get up to a sprint because I'm too fat. But you will keep going forward if you're not careful. And like I said earlier, I don't claim to be an expert. I'm not a screenwriter or anything like that. And it's not as though I'm, what's his name from Game Theory, where I think that you should listen to me and only me, and that I'm the only one who knows what I'm talking about, because it's definitely not the case. It's just that I love Star Wars, and I know Star Wars more than I do my family. And I can prove that. I mean, I love my family a lot. I do, trust me. But I didn't know that my dad had siblings until I was in my 20s. Because one day when we went to go visit him, and I was off that day because, you know, I've worked since I was 16. One day he said, "Hey, we're going over to my sister's for a barbecue." I'm like, "You're what?" I had no idea. Anyway. I have a lot of respect for Star Wars. It's gotten me through a lot of difficult times. I can't think of the last time a day didn't go by where I imagined myself not necessarily in the Star Wars universe, but just thinking about it. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of these ways, while not perfect, would have definitely helped the movie feel more like Star Wars. You might disagree, you might have different ideas, and that's great. I would love to hear them. Feel free to let me know at any time. If you think that something I said doesn't really work in regards to the larger Star Wars universe, let me know. I have no problems with like criticism of the constructive variety. Or even if you think that I don't know what I'm talking about, the movie was perfect in every way, and that I'm not a real fan, well, I'm going to disagree with you. I would still love to discuss the movie with you. Like I said in a previous video, if you see something that I don't, that you think would make me appreciate this movie a lot more, I am all ears. I have no problems if you guys have a good point and I don't. Like, if I don't have a rebuttal, I'll acknowledge it. I have no problems at all whatsoever. It's not like I'm the president or anything. I can admit if I've been bested. Sorry. I don't try and get political. It's just sometimes the shot is there. Let's see. If I can ever get around to like doing a fan edit that isn't going to remove all the female characters, because let's be honest, the fact that we be removing Rose from the story cuts a huge chunk of the female cast out of the movie. You know what I mean? And I am absolutely not anti-feminist. I'm very much a feminist. I always have been. I remember once when I was a boy, I think it was the third time I had ever seen Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. It was me and my mom. I was just a little tiny toddler. And somebody had been really disrespectful to her, and my mom explained it's because she's a woman, and, you know, men look down on women. And I'm like, but Leia was, you know, Leia was so strong, and people listened to her. Like, why isn't it always like that? And it just completely floored me that, you know, women couldn't be seen as strong and powerful, you know? And that's one of my favorite stories from my childhood, because, let's be honest, I don't have a lot. But anyway, I've gone on long enough. I hope you guys understand why I feel the way I do. I hope I did at least a decent job. If I didn't, let me know down in the comments. Man, the reflection of the screen in my glasses looks so creepy. I hope this was enjoyable for you guys, even with all of the tangents that I take and all the ramblings that I do. I really wanted these videos to be closer to like 15-20 minutes, but I'll be honest, I knew that they weren't going to be. I talk way too fast. I talk way too slow. I talk way too much. But this came from the heart, and I wanted to, do something for you guys that, was fun for me, but also I think good for us to talk about. And I hope that we can do something like this soon. I have a few ideas. I'm thinking of starting a podcast. Let me know if you guys would be interested. Anyway, thanks to you guys for watching, and may the Force be with you. Always.